We're getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
There are some puzzling new developments tonight in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrie.
We're getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, because there's been a development in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. There are some puzzling new developments tonight in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrie. When the second search warrant was executed, nobody outside the investigation knew what it meant. There was no press conference, no statement, no visible sign that anything had changed. But something had. Because the moment that team crossed the threshold of that property, the entire scope of what investigators believed they were dealing with quietly expanded. And that expansion did not happen because of one dramatic discovery. It happened because of what was missing: disorder. A space that has been left alone long enough will always show it. Dust settles unevenly. Objects drift. Small environmental shifts accumulate over weeks and months into something unmistakable. Abandonment has a texture, and that texture was not present inside that house. What investigators found instead was the opposite: deliberate order. Not the kind left behind by someone who cleaned before leaving, the kind maintained by someone who intended to return. That distinction matters more than most people realize, because a space being maintained is not a space being abandoned. It is a space being used. And the moment that determination was made, every question investigators had been asking shifted direction. The connection to Tommaso Cioni had not appeared suddenly. It had emerged gradually, the way significant connections usually do, through
structured from the beginning. Because a second location does not appear in an investigation like this without meaning something. It means the event that triggered the investigation was not the beginning. It was a point on a longer timeline. That timeline had infrastructure behind it. Infrastructure is one of those words that sounds abstract until you understand what it actually represents in an investigation. It means planning that existed before the event occurred. It means resources that were positioned in advance. It means that whatever happened did not emerge from a sudden decision. That timeline had infrastructure behind it. Infrastructure is one of those words that sounds abstract until you understand what it actually represents in an investigation. It means planning that existed before the event occurred. It means resources that were positioned in advance. It means that whatever happened did not emerge from a sudden decision. That timeline had infrastructure behind it. Infrastructure is one of those words that sounds abstract until you understand what it actually represents in an investigation. It means planning that existed before the event occurred. It means resources that were positioned in advance. It means that whatever happened did not emerge from a sudden decision. This was not a single camera in a corner. This was architecture, a layered structure built to observe, to record, and to process over time. The implications of that are significant because a system designed for continuity is a system that was never intended to be temporary. It was built to function across an extended period, which means the information it gathered extended across that same period. And that period, based on the indicators investigators found, did not begin in February. It began earlier. How much earlier is one of the central questions still being worked through. But the answer to that question does not just affect this case, it potentially affects others. That is the part of this investigation that remains least understood publicly, because when a structured surveillance system is found inside a property connected to an active disappearance case, investigators do not simply ask what it was used for in this instance, they ask what else it may have been used for. They begin cross-referencing. They pull adjacent records. They look at open cases, unresolved patterns, unexplained signals in the same time window. Not because they are speculating, because the structure demands it. And that cross-referencing is what widened the scope. Quietly, without announcement, without any public-facing confirmation, the investigation moved outward. Not chaotically, not in a direction driven by assumption, but in a direction driven by evidence that kept suggesting the same thing. This was not isolated. The personal items found inside the property accelerated that process, because objects with no clear ownership inside a controlled environment are not background detail. They are indicators. They represent presence, and presence that cannot be explained is presence that must be explained. Investigators began tracing each item methodically, not just what it was physically, but how it arrived there, because there are only a limited number of answers to that question. It was brought, it was used and left, or it belonged to someone who did not choose to leave it behind. That third possibility is the one that carries the most weight, and it is the one investigators approached most carefully. None of these discoveries produced a single clear answer. What they produced was a direction that keeps pointing toward the same conclusion. Whatever Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was, it was not spontaneous. The environment around it had been built, the timing had been studied, the access had been prepared, and the people involved had not acted in one impulsive moment. They had operated deliberately across time, with enough structure to suggest this was not unfamiliar territory. That profile changes how investigators work, because you do not pursue a structured operation the same way you pursue a reactive crime. You map it, you trace it from multiple angles simultaneously. You look for the points where separate threads intersect, because those intersections are where clarity emerges. Digital forensics running parallel to physical analysis, behavioral mapping overlaid against movement records, geographic data tested against known timelines, each track running independently until it stops being independent and starts confirming something the others found. Those confirmations are building, not in a way that can be announced yet, but in a way that has already changed the internal direction of the case. Law enforcement has remained controlled in what they have said publicly. That restraint is not absence of progress. It is the natural posture of an investigation at the stage where public information can compromise what has not yet been completed. At the center of all of it, underneath every system, every pattern, every layer of analysis, there is still one fact that has not changed since the first day. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was inside her home, and then she was not. Everything else, every discovery, every expanding thread, every new question exists because of that, because she has not been found. And that is the only outcome that closes this case in the way it needs to be closed. The structures that were built to create distance between what happened and what is known were built with patience. Investigators are dismantling them with the same, piece by piece, record by record, until the gap between what is known and what happened closes completely. That is the direction this is moving, slowly where it needs to be slow, and when it breaks, it will not break gradually. If you have seen anything connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, anything that felt out of place, anything that did not make sense at the time, that information matters. FBI tip line 1-800-CALL-FBI. Online at tips.fbi.gov. A $1 million reward is available and can be claimed without giving your name. What you know could be the detail that connects everything else. This case is not finished. It is not cold. It is moving, and it will not stop until Nancy comes home.